It's about that time for another cropped basket challenge where my husband picks out mystery items from my craft room, packs them up into a basket, and then I have to put together something on my Gelli plate that has all of the supplies in this basket. So I have no idea what's in here. I'm always impressed that he can find things. That means I'm somewhat organized enough that he can find the items that go in this basket. So I'll just start pulling the things out as I'm seeing for the first time what is in this basket. So he's got some textures in here. There's a shelf liner and some bubble wrap. And then I've got some paints. He pulled out some golden paints for me. He put alcohol inks in there, some black paint, white paint, lunar paste, gold, Dragonfly glaze. This is the red, violet, blue shift. More alcohol ink. This is a foam stamp by PM Artist Studio. Here are some stamps, a few more stamps here, and an embossing folder. I did emboss a piece of paper, and that's what I'll use as a texture. So I'm going to start with my small Gelli plate. I tend to use my small Gelli plate when I do alcohol inks because you can see it's already yellowed. When you use alcohol inks, especially this green color, it's definitely going to stain your Gelli plate. Since mine's already stained, I don't mind using it over and over, but my larger gel plate on the right, that one doesn't have the staining yet from the alcohol inks, so as long as it's kind of looking good, I'm gonna try keeping the alcohol inks on the smaller gel plates. But the different colors, they'll stain it differently if you've used alcohol inks. I don't really mind it. It's not like it ruins the plate or anything. It just makes it so it just looks older, you know, yellowed, but it still works the same, and it's a little bit harder to see what the colors look like when the plate isn't as bright or clear. So sometimes I can't tell if the colors are looking like mud or if they look pretty together. So a lot of times when I'm using the alcohol inks, it's a surprise when it comes out. So in this case, I'm just using the 3 colors, and I'm using some blending solution and a little bit of I spritzed on some 91% alcohol. And I'm just using my blower tool and just kind of moving around the ink and letting them blend in some areas and just seeing how the colors overlap. Just wanted a little bit of overlapping without creating a muddy color, because the red and the green may cause a muddy color because they don't really mix well. So I was just trying to mix them, but not too much. I was really glad my husband put some alcohol inks in this. I actually really like using alcohol inks on the gel plate, and I haven't done it in a little while, but they're so relaxing, and it's fun seeing the interesting shapes that you can get from just blowing out the colors and the little blobs. So I didn't let that dry completely, but it was starting to dry. I was trying to see if I could pull off any of the texture of this peculiar Pebbles stamping foam, and I got a little bit, but not too much. So I just went ahead and let that, or I put this shelf liner on it first to see if I can pull up any more of that ink. It did pull up a little bit more, and then I'm gonna let it dry. Alcohol inks do dry pretty quickly, so that's kind of nice. And I wanted to see how I was going to incorporate this lunar paste. I decided to try brayering it out on my gel plate. I just put a little bit on the larger plate. This is not very fluid. This is something you would, like a, I don't know, butter, some kind of a cream thing, but it's definitely better when you're using it through a stencil. But there weren't any stencils in my basket, and I guess I could have just put it on my completed prints, but I decided I'd try it this way because I've never actually brayered this out on my gel plates before. Just trying to see if I can get an interesting design and also catch some light with the gold. Now over on my larger plate, I went ahead and started dropping my golden paints on. I did some white, some of the blue and the green, and I'm just blending those together. Now that those are fairly well mixed on my brayer, I'm just rolling off the excess onto my smaller print. And this is that embossed piece that I had done. Now I embossed copy paper here, but I typically will emboss the 110 pound Nina White cardstock. It didn't pull up all of the ink, and I feel like with the thicker paper, it pulls up a lot more of the ink. So if you're trying embossing folders, the paper does matter, the thickness of it, as to how much it's going to pull off. And also, the more saturated your paper gets, the less it pulls up the colors. Just in those open areas, I went with my stamping foam just to get a little more design on the gel prints. And some bubble wrap. So for these gel prints, I literally was just playing. I had no vision for what I was going to be doing. I just went to work with figuring out the layers. In this case, I didn't have to actually pick my colors. I just had to pick which ones I was going to use together. My husband did make it pretty easy on me. He gave me some colors that blend well together, and he gave me some colors that I can pull the prints with. So that black and the white, those are the colors I'm going to use to pull my prints. And to give it a little bit of shine in between, that's where I'm using the Dragonfly glaze, just to give it a little bit of something extra, and also to use it. Trying to see if I can pull up any texture of the Dragonfly glaze before I let it dry, and then I'll put my final coat on. So for the large one, I'm going to use white in the background. I didn't quite use enough white. So as I was brayering it out, I could already tell it would have been enough to cover it, but it was already starting to dry. I tried to put down some more white, and when I was brayering that out, I started removing some of the paint. So I decided to just stop there and put my paper on it and just see what I could pull up. For my next one, I'm going to use the metallic black, and this time I made sure I had plenty of paint on the plate to be able to cover the entire surface. And I even had to brayer off a little bit, but I wanted to make sure it was going to be enough to pull my print. Okay, so once those both dried, as I was pulling up this larger one, it was very interesting. It was almost peeling off of the paper, and it was kind of peeling off of the gel plate. It was like a skin. It was so strange, but I think it was because my paint, it wasn't quite enough paint to pull up the entire print, so parts of it got left behind on the gel plate. So it was just interesting, but I thought it actually created a really cool pattern. Like the edge of it kind of looked like, if you were to just make a rough edge. I thought it looked pretty cool actually, so I wasn't upset about that. And then you can see the little bit of gold shining through and the textures. So for the smaller one, again, this one has the black on the background. And this one is the one with the alcohol links. So I wanted to see how those alcohol links turned out. And alcohol links, they're transparent, so whatever color is behind them is really going to show through. So that blue really does show through, and the alcohol links, they're still very much visible, but they would look completely different if I had a white background on those. Now I wanted to get my stamp, so I still had some stamps in the basket that I needed to use. So that's what I'm brayering out here. And I'm going to start using some of these stamps on my gel prints. The white will go on the darker one and the black will go on the lighter print. I did let that paint dry on the gel plate before I added the black, and now I'm going to do some black stamping on the larger one. One thing I noticed about stamping with the acrylic paint and the clear stamps is that the first few didn't seem to put down too much paint on the page, but the more the paint kind of built up on the stamp, the better the impressions got. So I just thought that was interesting. I don't know if that's a common thing, whoever maybe stamps regularly on their gel plate with their acrylic paints. I tend to stamp with my stamping inks and not acrylic paints, so this is just a new medium on stamping for me. And also the foam stamps work much better as well. I don't know if they just tend to hold the ink a lot better, the paint, but these clear ones, they just had a really faint design, not quite as vivid as you would get when you're just regular stamping. So I just went ahead while that white paint was still wet and I put a piece of paper down to pull that print. So you can see here, it's just some really light stamping. You can see it, but it's not like super bold. If I were to have stamped these with my black VersaFine Onyx black ink, it would have been much more noticeable. The white one looks really cool. Like I said, as the stamp was more used and had more paint on it, I got a better stamp off. So this print was on the gel plate that had my alcohol inks on it, and you can see those little yellow spots. That's actually where the green was. So like I said, the green definitely stains your gel plate, and it looks like the color's kind of lingering even after I've pulled the print. I'm using more black paint, and this time I'm using one of the other stamp sets that was in the basket. So this is the stripe stamp, and it's just like a background stamp. Again, my first pickup of the paint with my acrylic or with my clear stamp, it didn't really transfer the black over. By the second round, pressing it in, you can see more of the paint actually transferred over. Then to get more paint, I went in between the lines where the black paint still was, and I'm just trying to see if I can get any more of that over onto my gel print. If you are using your clear stamps on your gel plate with your acrylic paints, just remember acrylic paint will dry and may cause some damage to the stamps unless you clean them off right away. So they may not work quite as well unless you clean them off right away. So I was having that paint stick again with the white paint, so I was trying not to remove too much of what was already on the gel plate. In this case, I pressed down firmly with this larger stamped background, and it came off really nice. So the white did transfer really well. The black did not transfer this great. I'll put a little bit of bubble wrap on the background. I'll let that dry and add the Dragonfly glaze. And here you can still see some of that green that looks like yellow is still coming up on my prints. In order to get it to stop doing that, if you don't want that coming through anymore, you can use baby oil or whatever you use to clean your gel plate, and that should take care of it. So this was my brayer off sheet. What I've been doing here lately is I have a magazine that I would have normally probably just thrown away, and I'm going page by page and just brayering off onto the pages, and you can see you can hardly even tell it's a magazine page, and it just looks like my other brayer off. So I'm really liking having the magazine pages of pages I would have normally thrown away and have a new purpose for them. So here are my prints that I made with my basket challenge. I really like how those kind of like neutral black and white ones turned out. That was a little unexpected for me. I wasn't even planning to have those, but they ended up turning out really nice. But I also like the colorful ones as well. So those used the golden paints, and of course I love the golden paint colors. And the alcohol inks have really nice vibrant colors there in the front. So I just think that these turned out so interesting and fun and completely different than what I probably would have just picked out for myself. So I do love that my husband takes the time to go through my craft room. He goes shopping and finds these fun things for me to craft with in my own craft room. So hope you enjoyed watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for being here, and happy crafting.